Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian in Norfolk, Virginia, where we're covering NATO Allied Command Transformations, Chiefs of Transformation Conference, an annual gathering of transformation leaders from across the Atlantic Alliance. And we have with us Jason Summers, who is the CEO and Chief Scientist of ARiA. You guys have a fascinating technology. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do and its application to national security.
So what we're talking about today is some work that we developed for the Air Force just within the last year. It was to address a particular problem that the Air Force has. And they're concerned about the ability of DoD organizations to be able to acquire innovative technology. And they know that the complication of the laws, of the rules and regulations, of things like the FAR, are perceived as a risk by innovative firms, particularly firms that don't usually do business with the government. So what they were looking for, and what we developed, is called MICA, the Machine Interface for Contracting Assistance. And what MICA does is it understands the rules and regulations, and in the same way Siri might, answers just your everyday questions that someone, whether they're an expert or just a naive person who's never done business with the government, might have about what risks or what kind of requirements those rules and regulations might have on them. So it was developed for, like I said, the Air Force. It's something we've actually briefed up to the Secretary, Secretary James, and it's going to be going into deployment within the Air Force in the next year. So it's kind of an unusual application of AI. We think about natural language processing and machine learning and deep learning as being able to understand sort of common documents, right? They're good at analyzing the sentiment of a Twitter feed or Facebook, but the law is really not like a regular document. Meaning is construed in complicated ways. Right. A judge decides what that means, and that's what MICA does. It learns to understand the law the same way an expert does.
And how do you guys do that exactly? Because that is a very, very sophisticated thing you're doing that is also subject to a degree of interpretation. So how do you build that interpretation into it?
Yeah. So one of the challenges is that you have to understand precedent. So that's one of the things we carry very deeply about. So when the meaning of a law is not only what it says, but what it cites, what cites it, what decisions are rendered, and how they cite that law. And so we take all that information and MICA learns from all of those things. So how, not just what it says and how that text is interpreted, but how it's been interpreted by the courts.
And how does it continuously learn? Does it draw on its own in terms of searching this stuff, or are these functions that you have to put in? For example, if the Supreme Court makes a precedent-setting decision, do you need to enter it in, or does MICA find it on its own and incorporate that into its learning set?
So the nice thing now is that law is largely available online. Historical law is not, and if you were to call up the Library of Congress, or you'd find out that there's some things that aren't available digitally. But the newest law that's setting precedent is, and so I sort of anthropomorphize, but she's continually ingesting new laws and new regulations, because of course the regulations aren't static, right? They change over time, and she's learning both what they mean over time because the interpretations evolve, but also she's learning how that precedent changes in time. The new laws come out. And there's new executive orders, as we're all familiar with in the DoD space, particularly in the last few years. So that changes radically how things are interpreted. So she's continually mining that information and relearning, and then learning from how people use the system, the kinds of questions they ask, and so forth.
What are some of the challenges as a small business growing in this environment? Obviously, the Pentagon, Dr. Carter, Bob Work, have focused on innovation as being a priority. Frank Kennel has talked about it. What are some of the challenges you guys have faced? Have some of these innovation policies helped you?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I mean, I think that's really what we're trying to target with MICA, and that's the problem we're addressing. The biggest challenge we find as we interface a lot with academia, sort of ARiA's business model is to work at that intermediate space between the conventional DoD contracting and academia, and we do things that are both on the academic side and on the sort of innovative new company side, but of course we're working very closely with DoD. So we talk to people in Silicon Valley regularly, and they're scared to death of what these regulations might mean for them. I think the biggest obstacle to bringing people who are genuine outsiders who might have ideas that are immediately relevant is that they just can't even anticipate what the risks would be, or someone's told them that their technology is really relevant, but they have in-house counsel, but their in-house counsel is centered around IPOs, not centered around protests, right? To government dealing with court of federal claims. So the just the unperceived or unknown risk is huge for genuine outsider firms. We're fortunate in that we were founded around being both academic and within the DoD structure, so it's been a natural bridge for us. But for folks who don't have that situation, I think it's actually they look for other markets that are easier to access, that won't have strange rules. One of the examples I give, this is not in the legal sphere, where we work with some legal tech firms, or have interacted with them on some topics, but this is about we also work in the gaming area. We develop training tools based around gaming, and a lot of gaming firms, of course, use contemporary, modern tools to coordinate their teams. And when they sub to us, and the first thing I tell them is, well, you can't use cell phones when you're in your car. And they say, well, how are we supposed to get in the performance of your contract? How are we supposed to get anything done? We use Slack for everything, and of course while we're driving. So there's just fundamental norms within DoD that are just countercultural to people who are doing the most innovative work outside of that space. And those are the big challenges. Yeah.
And as the incoming team comes in, there's a debate whether or not they're going to pick up on the innovation initiatives or not. What would your advice as a small business owner be to the incoming Pentagon team?
Yeah, this is a good question. I'm optimistic. I think that one of the biggest concerns I would have, or the biggest priorities I would have, is to say that the changes that have gone in, so things like DIUX, are positive, and if the goal is to really sort of empower American business, it needs to go beyond that. It needs to actually look at not only tools like MICA that can help people navigate the regulations, but actually simplifying those. And if that's a goal of the administration, which I've heard, then that's definitely the right direction to go.
Jason, thanks very much and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate talking to you.